I thank the Speaker and gentlemen for introducing this. I think it's appropriate that the Congress at times names post offices, but I don't think that it's appropriate that we spend hours and hours doing it. I think that if we ask our constituents at home if they want us to spend more time naming post offices, or talking about post offices that have been named, or talking about something important that will really affect them, like cap and trade or cap and tax coming down the road, I think they'd say the latter. Now, I plan to vote for this post office naming, and I think it's appropriate that Carl B. Smith have a post office named after him in Maine. Now, I think it's important that people across the country know what we're going to be debating this summer. That's going to affect them and affect them deeply. And if I was convinced that we were going to have adequate debate time on the floor for cap and trade, then I might feel more inclined to talk about post offices. But my guess is, when it comes to this, we're going to be having a very small amount of time actually on the floor. Very few amendments, if history is any guide, will be allowed on this cap and trade legislation. And there'll be a truncated time and space that we actually have to talk about what is going to affect people all across the country. Now, if I were supporting this cap and trade legislation that's coming down the pike, believe me, I wouldn't want to talk about it much here either, because I think the more people learn about it, the more they fear about what is coming down the road here. What is coming down the road are higher energy taxes. Let's be real here. And I think some on the other side of the aisle have been honest enough to admit that. The representative from Michigan said it best, I think. Nobody in this country, quote, realizes that cap and trade is a tax, and it's a great big one. Even the president, we know, said during his campaign that electricity prices, energy prices, would, quote, necessarily skyrocket under cap and trade. So we know that that's going to happen. But let's be honest about it. This is a high energy tax that Americans all over the country are going to be paying. It's going to come to Washington, and then Washington's going to decide how to spend it, likely on something completely different. If we want to be honest about helping the environment, then just impose a carbon tax and make it revenue neutral. Give commensurate tax relief on the other side. Myself and another Republican colleague have introduced that legislation to do just that. Let's have an honest debate about whether or not we want to help the environment by actually having something that is revenue neutral, where you tax consumption as opposed to income. Then you would have a real honest debate, at least here. Instead, this is a revenue source to pay for other items. Not just that, it's a revenue source that is haphazardly imposed, or a tax that is haphazardly imposed, or I shouldn't say haphazardly because I think it's by design. When you look at this cap and trade legislation that's coming through committee now, you realize that certain sectors, certain utilities and others have been exempted from it, will be given permits instead of sold permits to pollute. And so this is nothing more than bringing more revenue to Washington, deciding who is going to be taxed in the end, and somehow down the road, somehow, the environment is supposed to be helped. But whenever you have just a new revenue source for Washington to decide how you're going to spend it, you don't really have an honest debate about what you're doing. Let's face it. What we're likely to have is something like we've had over the past few decades with ethanol policy, where we've subsidized ethanol again and again and again, every year, more and more, by tariffs, by market protections, by all-out subsidies, you name it, we've protected that industry. And in the end, what have we gained by it? I think it's a record that is dubious at best, and we keep saying, oh, we've just got to prime the pump in just a few more years and it'll be on its own. But it never is. Now, oh, it's not working that well, but it's a bridge to something else. Let's be honest about this debate. Let's have a debate where if you're going to help the environment, if you feel that we ought to put a value on carbon, then do it in a revenue-neutral manner, so you're not bringing more revenue to Washington. And that's what this cap and trade legislation is about. I don't know how else you can put it. But that's why it's important to talk about this rather than simply talk about post offices being named, because this will affect the average American family in a big way. Some have estimated a few $1,000s a year that might impact the average American family. Whatever it is, it's going to impose a cost on the economy that is very difficult at this point to bear. And for what? What do we get in return? More revenue that Washington can spend on a different purpose or some other program? That's what this is turning into right now. So I think it's appropriate, Madam Speaker, that we talk about cap and trade today, and I'm glad that we have something on the floor that allows us to do that. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.